In this next vignette, Beautiful and Cruel, Esperanza is beginning to evaluate how she compares to other women. And she does this by looking at how her sister sees herself and how she's perceived even within her family. She says that she is the ugly daughter, the one that nobody comes for. Nenny, who apparently is pretty, says that she won't wait her whole life for a husband to come and get her, that Minerva's sister left her mother's house by having a baby, but she doesn't want to go that way either. She wants things all her own to pick and choose. Nenny has pretty eyes, so, she can sort of be picky. She can decide how she wants to get married. My mother says that when I get older, my dusty hair will settle and my blouse will learn to stay clean, but I have decided not to grow up tame like the others who lay their necks on the threshold waiting for the ball and chain. I think this is a quote that could be used in a paper. This is like a conscious effort that she's making even as an adolescent, that she's going to take a different route. We already know that she's planning on trying to be a writer, that she wants to go to school, and we have a sense from the story so far that Esperanza is paying a lot of attention to how women make a life for themselves that would not be on Mango Street. She goes on to say that in the movies, there is always one with red lips who is beautiful and cruel. Her power is her own. She will not give it away. And so Esperanza says she has begun her own quiet war. I am one who leaves the table like a man without putting back the chair or picking up the plate. So she is not going to be a woman who looks out the window. She is not going to be a woman who answers to a husband. And interestingly, Sandra Cisneros also, doesn't, at least in her introduction, has no mention of any sort of relationship. She is her own person. She is a writer. So this is what Esperanza is aiming for too. This is also a really important vignette. This is about Esperanza's mother, who says that she could have been somebody too, that she, didn't have to necessarily be a wife and a mother, that she could have been something else. And Esperanza mentions that her mother has a lot of talents. It seems like her mother is very artistic. She can sing, and she can sing opera music. She can draw. She does a lot of sewing and crochet, and she has a lot of creative talents. She also is a wonderful cook. So her mother says to her, Esperanza, you go to school and study hard. Madame Butterfly was a fool. Look at my camarades, she means Azora, whose husband left, and Yolanda, whose husband is dead. Go take care all your own. You got to take care of yourself, she says. Shame is a bad thing, It keeps you down. You want to know why I quit school? Because I didn't have nice clothes. No clothes, but I had brains. So this is a mistake her mother made. Her mother was smart enough to stay in school, and because she was poor, she quit going. So the message to Esperanza, who is also smart, is to use it, to stay in school. Remember, her Aunt Lupe also told her to keep writing. So the message that she's getting from the people around her in her community is that, they recognize that she has talent, that she has brains, and that she has the potential to have a different kind of life. And they're telling her, make sure you chase that dream. Sally. We have a couple chapters here about Sally. So remember, Sally is the one who has to go straight home after school because her father says she's too beautiful, and she's the one who takes off her makeup as she's walking home. We also find out in this vignette that Sally is abused by her father. She tells Esperanza more about this than anybody else. In fact, it says that at one point, Sally was actually going to stay with their family for a little while because of the abuse. And she did come with a sack of clothes. This is over here, and a paper bag of sweetbread that her mama sent. and she would have stayed, except that at night her father came back. He had been crying. He knocked on the door and said, "Please come back. This is the last time." And she said, "Daddy," and went home. So she makes excuses, that he never hits her hard. Her mama puts lard on the places where she has bruises and where it hurts. But she doesn't tell about that time he hit her with his hand like a dog, like she was an animal. And then this time here it says, there was one time he just went crazy because her father saw her talking to a boy after school. He forgot that he was her father between the buckle and the belt and said, "You're not my daughter, you're not my daughter." And then he broke into his hands. So this is really, I made a note here, this is a social problem for every community. Abuse happens everywhere. It is not just a Hispanic problem or a problem of people who are of lower socioeconomic status. It is everywhere. And what's interesting and what's puzzling about it is that people who are abused, whether they are children or adults, oftentimes stay with the abuser. So there's so many unknowns about this, but I know a lot of times counselors say that, obviously, I think we could see that Sally wants a father. She wants to have a daddy. She doesn't want to be, quote unquote, without a dad. She has hope that he would stop. It's interesting that the mother lets this continue. But remember, the mother, like a lot of mothers in this community, feel very much subservient to their husbands and dependent on their husbands. So this is something that I think is just a lesson. I just think you have to read this and realize, these things happen, and a lot of times nobody knows that these things are happening. The monkey garden. This is a longer vignette, and the first thing I just want to remind you of is that in Sandra Cisneros' introduction, she talks about how there was a little garden between two buildings when she was growing up in Chicago, and that the people who lived next door had a monkey, and that they would sometimes be out in that little vacant lot between the two buildings with this monkey. So she used that memory to write this vignette. This monkey garden is way bigger than the one that she describes in the introduction. So she's using that as a springboard for something larger. The way this is described, it seems like it's a much larger city lot. There's a tremendous amount of imagery here. She talks about the fact that the people who had the monkey have moved to Kentucky, and then it just becomes this sort of wild vacant lot where the kids can play. And initially it was truly a garden. So the people who had the monkey had planted all sorts of flowers. They had fruit trees, roses and pears. And so all this imagery here, these are beautiful descriptions of flowers and trees and nature and bees and all kinds of things. Spiders. But then what happens is eventually it gets taken over by weeds. All those lovely flowers die. Dead cars appear overnight. So it becomes more like a junkyard. I did see here, it seems like a big exaggeration for a city lot when you think about, even if it was a large city lot, that all these things would be growing there in the city. It's pretty spectacular, honestly, if that was even growing in a more rural area. So this could be exaggeration on purpose, because the contrast between this place and the rest of a really rough urban environment could make it seem even greater than this. But I just made a note that it seemed like an exaggeration. But then we have this metaphor, the dead cars. It became, just a place of sleepy cars. Nenny found $1 and a dead mouse. And so they would just go and play. They would jump on the cars. They would make forts in the old cars. It was just a place to hang out. Somebody started the lie that the monkey garden had been there before anything. We like to think the garden could hide things for 1,000 years. There beneath the roots of soggy flowers were the bones of murdered pirates and dinosaurs, and the eye of a unicorn turned to coal. So like their imagination as kids goes wild there. And remember, that, Esperanza is narrating as a high school student at this point, but she probably has memories from when she was younger too. And we have a shift, pretty significant shift here, where she says, "This is where I wanted to die and where I tried one day, but even the monkey garden, not even the monkey garden would have me. It was the last day I would go there." So something terrible is going to happen at the monkey garden. Someone said she was getting too old to play the games, which is true. She probably is getting too old to play the games. And she and Sally are there, and Esperanza wants to leave because someone had said she was too old to be there playing anymore. And she tries to get Sally to leave too, but she won't. Sally is talking to Tito and his friends. Tito was mentioned earlier as a cousin of Esperanza's who was watching her dance when she, in that chanclas vignette. So this is a guy, clearly, who girls like. So Sally is sort of goofing around with these guys. They've taken her car keys. She's saying, that she's mad and she wants them back. And then one of the guys says, "You can have the keys if you kiss us." And Sally pretended to be mad at first, but then she said yes. It was that simple. And then this is where Esperanza becomes upset. I don't know why, but something inside me wanted to throw a stick. Something wanted to say no when I watched Sally going into the garden with Tito's buddies all grinning. "It was just a kiss, that's all. A kiss for each one. So what?" she said. Only how come I felt angry inside? So she feels that something is wrong and that perhaps Sally is in danger. I mean, she's going off with a bunch of guys by herself. So Esperanza goes to Tito's mother's. She runs up 3 flights of stairs to where Tito lived. Her mother was ironing shirts. And she told the mother, "Your son and his friends stole Sally's keys, and now they won't give them back until she kisses them. And right now they're making her kiss them," I said out of breath. And the mother has no reaction. "Oh, those kids, they're so silly." And I looked at her a long time, but couldn't think of anything to say. And so she ran back down to where she knew Sally needed to be saved. Esperanza took 3 big sticks and a brick, thinking that she's going to save Sally. But when she got there, Sally said to go home. Those boys said, "Leave us alone." I felt stupid with my brick. They all looked at me as if I was the one that was crazy and made me feel ashamed. And then she just had to run away. And so Esperanza cries and cries and cries. Her face is so hot. And so this moment to me, this is a loss of innocence moment here, which is what happens as we're going through, coming of age stories. There's always a loss of innocence. She's recognizing that Sally wants to be sexually involved with these guys. We don't really know what's going on back there. But regardless, it's not something that Esperanza is comfortable with. She doesn't want to have friends that do this. She doesn't want to think that this could be her, potentially. So she read somewhere in India that there are priests who can will their heart to stop beating. I wanted to will my blood to stop, my heart to quit its pumping. I wanted to be dead, to turn into the rain, my eyes melt into the ground like 2 black snails. I wished and wished and wished. But when I got up, my dress was green and I had a headache. So this is a realization that the garden is no longer for children. It's for sex when it comes to being their age. I'm sure there are still kids who play there, but for Sally, this is a place to fool around. And Esperanza doesn't belong there anymore. She doesn't belong with the children because she's too old to play with the kids. And she doesn't belong with Sally because she's not ready, nor does she want to be having sexual interactions with guys. So this coming of age moment, this loss of innocence, is a realization that the world can be scary, that the world can be abusive. Of course, Sally too is the one who's been abused. So there's just, these vignettes are showing a tremendous amount of sort of horror, really, things in their society that are very upsetting as these kids are growing up. And this last one builds off this. Sally, you lied. So this is another episode where she has gone someplace with Sally. They're no longer in the monkey garden. They're at a carnival. And Esperanza said, I was waiting by the red clowns. I was standing by the tilt-a-whirl where you said, and anyway, I don't like carnivals. I went to be with you because you laugh on the tilt-a-whirl. So she really cares about Sally. She cares about her friendship with Sally. She wants to be with her. She wants to see her happy. You know, I like it when you laugh, and I went because of you. Those boys that look at you because you're pretty, I like to be with you, Sally. You're my friend. But that big boy, where did he take you? So again, she's going off with guys. I waited such a long time. I waited by the red clowns, just like you said, but you never came. You never came for me. Sally, 100 times, why didn't you hear me when I called? Man, I just get goosebumps reading this. This is horrible. Why didn't you tell them to leave me alone? The one who grabbed me by the arms, he wouldn't let me go. He said, I love you, Spanish girl, I love you, and pressed his sour mouth to mine. And then he kept going. So, you know, he's touching her. He's taken her away from all the crowds. We don't know exactly what happens, but clearly Esperanza is sexually assaulted. So the red clown's laughing, their thick tongue laugh, the tilt-a-whirl. She's just like in a blur in this place that she doesn't like. This stranger saying, I love you, Spanish girl. Another loss of innocence. So these vignettes are rough. I think that, you know, we're getting two messages here. Girls get abused physically and sexually, and the only way to get away from this, at least from the perspective of the elders in Esperanza's community, is for her to stay in school and be independent.